We've seen who animals are. We've learned about their amazing abilities, their talents, their intelligence. They deserve not to be bullied, not to be dominated, and not to be stolen from, including having their lives taken from them.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary. This week, we continue our Women Thought Leader series with Ingrid Newkirk, the president and one of the founders of PETA, the world's largest animal rights organization. She's also the author of several books, the latest, Animal Kind, remarkable discoveries about animals and the remarkable ways we can be kind to them. Welcome, Ingrid. Good to see you again. We last met 10 or 15 years ago, something like that, when we were both toddlers.
And the world was young, yes.
So I'll ask you about Animal Kind in a moment, but I did first want to say you have completely revolutionized the animal rights movement, attitude in America. It's amazing what you've done. Just talk about, we still have, just like with women's rights or people of color rights, we still have a long way to go. But talk about the difference between 1980, when you co-founded PETA, and now in terms of Americans' attitudes towards animals.
Well, as you say, miles to go before we sleep, which I think everybody in every social movement agrees with. But, it's day and night. Because back then, when PETA started, we were mocked. People still have a laugh, but that's okay, about some of our issues, because we're forever pushing the envelope. Once you understand one cruelty, it's time to embrace the idea of getting rid of another. So back then, if you didn't want cow's milk, for example, and you heard, I'm sure, Joaquin Phoenix on the Oscars talk about how we value mother love, and yet we casually separate the mother cow from her beloved calf so we can put a piece of cheese on the pizza. If you wanted something else, you couldn't find it. You had to maybe get some soy powder and mix it by hand. Now you go to the supermarket and you spend 10 minutes looking at the shelf and thinking, do I want the macadamia? Do I want the almonds? So fur is dead, it's gone. That was our slogan, and no designer of any note designs fur anymore.
But they still sell it. They do still sell it.
They do, but no.
Because I won't patronize designers or stores who sell it. And you're right. What's happened in terms of being able to get shoes that look like leather, but that are not leather, and stuff that looks and tastes like meat and isn't meat, is just unbelievable.
You may not realize that you're getting apple leather or pineapple leather or cactus leather or mushroom leather. There are all these things that don't come from killing animals. And I think as we've got further and further away from being Stone Age people, we don't live in caves, we don't need animal hides and skins and fur anymore. We've also, thanks to the internet in great part, we've seen who animals are. We've learned about their amazing abilities, their talents, their intelligence, their emotional lives. And that's woken us up to the fact that we should leave them in peace. We should respect them. That, like any other living being, they deserve not to be bullied, not to be dominated, and not to be stolen from, including having their lives taken from them. But Gucci, Galliano, Donatella Versace, Donna Karan, none of those people uses fur anymore. And we've moved on to say don't use Angora, because we've shown the videotapes of those goats being, of those rabbits, being live plucked, their hair just taken out of them. And now stores are saying, all right, we won't sell that either. Mm-hmm. And we've moved on to say, no, nothing taken from an animal. Wool. People say, isn't it a haircut? We say, no, look at the videotapes we have shot in shearing sheds around the world. And you'll see those men, they smash those gentle sheep in the face with the clippers, stand on their necks. don't buy it. Just stay away. We've got fabulous fibers now, wonderful things to eat, to wear. You name it, there's something vegan for everything you liked or grew up liking.
I read somewhere that something like 5% of Americans are now vegan and vegetarian, which is at least 5, if not 10 times what it was when you got started. How do you push it to 90% or 100%?
It's going, and I think you can go to Dunkin' Donuts, you can go to Carl's Jr., all these places, Whole Foods, any supermarket, in fact, Target, and you find taste-alikes. I like to call them taste-alikes because people, if they don't know they're getting a vegan burger, now the quality and it's just exactly the same. Beyond Burger is everywhere.
Beyond Meat is a up-and-coming company. I was told by somebody from Farm Sanctuary a couple of weeks ago that one of those companies that makes lab meat or plant-based meat is coming out with something that tastes like pork.
Oh yes, pork, fish, chicken. We had years ago a contest, and we said we'll give $1 million to the first person who can come up with lab-grown chicken. And we chose $1 million because 1 million chickens an hour are still killed in the United States alone. And if you get to know chickens, and people say, don't tell me this, but I've taken in foster chickens from the Humane Society. Each one is a personality.
Right.
You know, some flirt with the rooster.
They love to snuggle.
Oh, they love to snuggle. They are dear. They make little noises the way your cat would make noises. They're interested in things.
People are going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but I was recently in Indochina, and I was in, I think it was Laos. I can't remember if it was Cambodia or Laos. We went to actually expat Vietnamese boat people who lived on Tonle Sap Lake, which is the largest freshwater lake in Asia. My husband and I were there to bird watch, and they were breeding alligators.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize this, but I went over, they had them in plastic tubs. I went over to get some video of it, and when you put your finger close to the net that was covering the tub, the little alligators figured they were being fed because that's usually what they see when they see a human ant. And they make this incredible, adorable noise. People don't realize they have brains. They think they're not just these things that, you know, and they skin them alive. And in Asia, they don't care.
Well, we've been to Zimbabwe, even in Texas, where alligators are raised in these stinking, dank pits in their own waste. And what they do to kill them is usually they're totally conscious. And who cares if you like alligators or you don't, or you like crocodiles or you don't? They're living, breathing, thinking, feeling individuals. They stick a metal rod down their spines, and that's how they kill them. And in our videos, you can see them struggle. A crocodile or alligator bag might go for $30,000. And that is beyond belief to me that someone would want that stinking, fetid, cruelly killed animal to be made into something you carry on the street.
Is it that they don't know or they don't care?
Some don't know, some don't care, because there is this bias. You know, others, that's the problem with this supremacist attitude. And it runs through every movement. If you don't relate to others, they're not like you in a way that makes you sympathetic or empathetic to them. And so you disregard their interests. You look down your nose at them. And with animal rights, there's a principle, and it's the same one that goes through every women's movement, anything, is that others are just like you, only a bit different. And there's no reason for you to think of yourself as better or to just be mean to them. Be respectful of everybody, every living being.
All right, let's get to your book, Animal Kind. I just keep seeing research showing that, you know, dogs have the vocabulary of a 3-year-old, pigs have the vocabulary of a 5-year-old, you know, parrots really understand words when they're talking to you, et cetera, et cetera. So Tell me about what's in the book.
Well, I learned so much, and I collect information about animals, so I was quite surprised at all the things I learned, from elephants to mice. You know, a little desert mouse will roll a rock in front of her burrow every night to catch the water so she can drink in the morning. An elephant will use his trunk above the water like a snorkel so that he can enjoy swimming, and they will swim maybe 30 miles for the pure joy of it. And dogs, of course, have such an incredible nose that they can smell a thumb drive that's hidden in a metal box in a metal cabinet. And they're being used now not only to detect cancerous tumors with as high a success rate as any human doctor, but against child pornography. Law enforcement officers are using them to sniff out those videos that are hidden. But I learned about horses' facial expressions, about how squid will send a message on one side of their body, maybe trying to court a female squid over there, and another completely different message on the other side saying, stay away, to some rival. It's everything you learn is just so fascinating about their communication abilities, how far they can go flying 7,000 miles, just navigating by low-frequency radio waves. They don't have a GPS, they don't have a map, and yet they can go to the same spot, in the same village, in the same place around the world with just reading the position of the stars, things like that.
Amazing. Now, you're in 80 countries. Are we, and I understand, a lot of the leaders of the animal rights movement are British. First of all, why is that? Are Brits ahead of the United States? I know, for example, fox hunting is now fox chasing, for example, in Britain, but there's still actual fox hunts all over the place in the United States.
Yeah, we might have just all been thrown out of Britain for some reason, I'm not sure. But you do find a lot of that. I think having a small landmass, like an island nation, it's much easier to affect change. The United States is like 50 different countries. The culture is so different from Texas to New York. I mean, you know, so it's harder to change an entire country overnight. And you've got nasty habits like fox hunting that go on, or did go on when I was growing up, now banned. And here you have rodeo, or you have other things that are done. I was just reading about a chicken drop, where in one part of the country they're throwing live chickens off a roof every year as a fundraiser for the town. And the sheriff said, anyone who's trying to stop us is a terrorist. And you think, you know, how ignorant can you be about the feelings of chickens and the fact we're in 2020. There are so many ways to raise money or amuse yourself. You don't have to torture small animals you don't understand.
But where would you place the U.S. in terms of recognizing that animals are individuals and may have some rights under law?
It's sort of a bit up and a bit down. And the world is so diverse, and it's just the same everywhere. As you have positive points and negative points, and certainly all over the world things need to change. People think of India as a very animal-respectful country, but you've been there and you know there are elephants chained for life in temples. They're going out of their minds. The elephants who are used in parades are often blind in one or both eyes. There's no veterinary care for them. Cows are supposed to be respected, yet we have 5 veterinarians working in Maharashtra alone, one state, trying to provide veterinary care for animals who are just dumped by the side of the road if they break a leg, pulling huge carts of sugarcane that they can barely manage. So every country, every state has its challenges.
You know, PETA, you did come to become sort of a household name in the beginning by doing things like using nude models on, billboards. I'd rather go naked than wear fur. And so how do you keep it moving forward? What's the next outrageous
Bonnie,
act?
We did provocative things in order to get the message discussed, because there was a time when nobody really thought it was worth discussing that animals needed to be treated kindly. Today, we have more people working on negotiations with corporations, on litigation, legislation, you name it. But we still do demonstrations. We still do those photos that you'll see everywhere. Recently, we had people outside the Fur Fashion Week, and we don't have to talk about fur anymore, but we talked about leather. And they were pouring something on their heads, which was, I think, a mixture of carbon and treacle, and to say leather is an environmental disaster and it's cruelty to animals, stay away from it. So we still do photo shoots and we're still provocative, but we have other ways now because people do understand by and large it's an issue.
I always think to myself, animals bite back. You eat them and they kill you. The number one cause of death in America, way outnumbering all forms of cancer combined, is heart disease. And heart disease comes from eating animal fat. Yeah,
and diabetes and high blood pressure and cancer of the colon, all these things you can get away from with a vegan diet.
So but I don't see enough emphasis on that side of it. Because if you can't appeal, if people don't have much humanity in them, or if they just were raised, not thinking about these things, not thinking about animals as individuals and can't see it that way, can't you get to them by saying, you're going to die using these products and eating these animals?
We're a selfish species, no question about it. Self-interest is what propels most people to make changes in their lives. Most people won't. We've been saying these things for years. Before there was an environmental movement almost, we were saying you cannot be a meat and dairy eating environmentalist. It's not possible. Now the United Nations says it, the World Health Organization says it. People usually don't listen to us when we talk about health or the environment, even though we try, because they know our primary interest is in stopping cruelty to animals. But there's the Physicians' Committee for Responsible Medicine putting that message out. The environmental groups are now putting that message out. And I just put out something from PETA that said, you can fly from Los Angeles to London and back. And if you're worried about the carbon footprint of flying, that is going to be less than 2 cheeseburgers. So, if you want to help, yes, plastic straws, don't use them, but it's all the animals, the turtles, the seals, the porpoises who are dying in the oceans, even whales, from discarded fishing gear. So don't eat fish. Don't support that industry. So we say those things, but really everybody knows in their heart that those are complementary arguments to we want to end suffering of animals. That's our primary goal.
I wanted to, I'm going to put this in front of my face so the audience can see it, but it's Joaquin Phoenix who spoke about and got the organizations and academies to serve vegan meals at I know it was at the Golden Globes and at the Academy Awards, where he won Best Actor for his role in Joker, but he spoke about animal cruelty. Do you have such a following among young people because of all the stars who've been involved? And tell me what he's done for Joaquin. Animal rights.
Joaquin is phenomenal. He feels it from his heart. His entire family does. And he did get them all to go vegan at the BAFTAs, the Oscars, the Golden Globes. And they said, we can't really go vegan. We can go almost vegan, but we have to serve fish. And his story is interesting because he became vegan, as did his family, when they were, his brothers and sisters were children. They were on a boat coming from South America to the U.S., and he saw a fish being gutted on the board the ship. And it upset him so much. He said, I'm never going to eat an animal again. So he said to the awards, no, you can't serve fish. And they said, all right, we'll go vegan. He's wonderful. We have the largest following of any social group on social media for animal rights. because the kids
how big
do
is that?
care. It's enormous, and don't ask me the figure.
How many millions?
It's millions. And we have a thing called PETA Future, a thing called PETA Save Our Species, SOS. We have PETA Kids. And I think, yes, in part it's stars and it's child stars, but more than that, it's that kids honestly don't know why we are hurting their friends. You know, when you're a child, you think of the dog, the cat, the horse, you think of them as your friends. They're like you. And then you grow up and somehow you become inured and you become hard and everybody else is eating them. But kids today aren't taking that step as much as any other generation did.
And I have to tell you, on Facebook, a guy he used to be a broadcast exec, and I did some work for him he's now retired. And after Joaquin Phoenix's speech, he was complaining on social media about, why did they allow him to go on and on like that? And I posted back to him. I said, Jim, you're showing your age. Your grandkids are going to think you're not just old, but from the Stone Age. You better get with it. So if you don't like it, don't watch it, but don't complain about it.
And it's fabulous. I mean, I'm animal rights, but the principle matters to me. And you see now, instead of just getting up and thanking their family and saying how wonderful it is to work in this industry, everyone is saying Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, animal rights. Like, yes, finally our lives have meaning. Let's do something.
Well, you have done just amazingly for animal rights, I must say. Talk about making a change. Tell me, what's the most important thing that you think you've done?
I think changing hearts and minds. It's not a very sexy thing to say. It's not very concrete. But really getting people to think about human supremacism, about supremacism generally, and about kindness. Henry Beston said it best. He said there are 3 things in life that are most important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. And when I wrote Animal Kind, I was thinking about Henry Beston's words, because you don't want to be on your deathbed looking back and thinking, I was in a free country. I had a voice. I could have done things. And here I am at the end of my life, and I could have spoken up then. I could have done something. So there are tangible victories, like getting rid of all car crash tests on animals, which is why you see those computerized mannequins on television now. There are wonderful things like that. But to me, it's getting people to think and be decent.
And President Trump, why Trump? Why did he, who you generally associate conservatives, particularly hardline conservatives, not with animal rights, and yet he signed this bill banning cruelty on the federal level. How did that happen?
He's done some very bad things for animals, that's for sure.
Yeah, a week or two later, he said he signed that bill allowing the importation of which of course didn't jive at all.
And both his sons, of course, are trophy hunters, which is absolutely inexcusable, indefensible. There's nothing you can say. To see an innocent animal, an animal just minding their own business, and think, I want to kill that, put the head on
with a high-powered rifle, scoped high-powered rifle,
with a guide, with a jeep, with all these things.
Right.
So it's difficult. But back in the day, it was very peculiar. There was the diving mule in Atlantic City. I don't know if you remember that.
Diving horse, wasn't it?
Diving horse or diving mule.
Right, and back in the 40s and 50s.
No, I think it used to be a horse and it became a mule. But anyway, no, back in 1980s. And Trump had his casinos there. And we went to him and said, can you stop this? And he did. So I think everybody is such a mixed bag in so many ways.
It's very emblematic of that fact, I would say.
But here's the thing. I mean, he wants to cut money. He wants money to get out of the federal budget. There are millions upon millions of dollars going now into tests on animals that have been going on for decades that are so absurd and so cruel that anyone can see they have nothing to do with human health. And I wish that he would look at our posters, our billboards on his way from Mar-a-Lago to the airport and think, whether I care or not about animals, who knows? I can cut the budget by putting that money into things that do help somewhere, not into those cockamamie things.
Well, good luck in everything you do, and thank you for the book, and thanks for spending some time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bonnie, very much.
That's it for this edition of To the Contrary. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/To the Contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.
For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/To the Contrary.
Be more. PBS.